Marcus's blood froze as the CEO's arrogant challenge echoed through the executive office. "I'll double your salary if you beat me." The janitor's first chess move sent a visible shock through Victoria Blackwood's composed facade, her eyes widening with the sudden terrifying realization that she had gravely underestimated her opponent. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. "I'll double your salary if you beat me," smirked the CEO. Victoria Blackwood's words hung in the air of her executive office, as precise and cutting as the tailored edges of her charcoal suit. The statement wasn't a generous offer, it was a dismissal wrapped in silk. She studied the man standing before her with the detached curiosity one might reserve for an unusual insect that had wandered into view. Marcus Reed shifted uncomfortably in his grey maintenance uniform, hands clasped behind his back, the fluorescent ceiling lights reflecting off the plastic name badge pinned to his chest. The chessboard between them on the polished obsidian desk, her idea, seemed suddenly like a vast battlefield rather than the elegant rosewood and maple square he had admired moments earlier. "Ms. Blackwood, I didn't come here to challenge you," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. "I came to discuss the pension cuts for the maintenance staff." Victoria's manicured fingers hovered over a white knight, her expression unchanged. "And I'm offering you a solution. Beat me, and I'll double not just your salary, but everyone's in your department." She gestured to the chair across from her with practiced grace. "Lose, and we never discuss this matter again. Consider it a corporate efficiency." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath them like a circuit board of light and shadow. 52 floors below, Marcus's colleagues were finishing their evening shifts, unaware that their futures were about to be wagered on a game that hadn't been part of anyone's agenda. 2 weeks earlier, Victoria Blackwood had become the youngest CEO in Meridian Technologies history. Her first executive action had been a comprehensive resource optimization initiative, corporate speak for gutting the pension plans of the lowest-paid workers while simultaneously approving executive bonuses. The announcement had rippled through the maintenance department like a cold wind, leaving behind whispers of second jobs and postponed retirements. Marcus had requested this meeting through proper channels, prepared his talking points, practiced his appeal to basic human decency. He hadn't expected to be offered a chess match instead of a conversation. "Time is valuable, Mr. Reed. More valuable than money in my experience." Victoria's voice was smooth as polished marble. "I have a board meeting in 90 minutes. Your move." Marcus stared at the chess pieces, each one carved with painstaking detail. He recognized the set. A Jack of London, handcrafted, worth more than he made in a month. He'd seen identical pieces in the employees' recreation room on the 3rd floor, where he sometimes played during his lunch breaks. What Victoria Blackwood couldn't know, was that the recreation room had become Marcus's sanctuary over the 7 years he'd worked at Meridian. While executives networked over cocktails and golf, Marcus had quietly decimated all comers on that battered chess table next to the vending machines. The company's engineers, analysts, and even the occasional vice president had fallen to his calculated gambits and patient endgames. But no one in a suit ever remembered the face of the man who emptied their trash cans. Marcus took a seat, the leather chair creaking beneath him. He knew he should walk away, return to his station, file a formal complaint through the union. This was a trap, a humiliation tactic, a story she would later tell over expensive scotch to reinforce the natural order of things. Instead, he reached forward and moved his pawn to e4. Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She mirrored his move, pawn to e5, classical, conservative, revealing nothing. 3 moves later, Marcus's first capture sent a white pawn off the board. Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly, the only indication that she noticed the subtle aggression of his opening strategy. The wall clock ticked methodically in the background, marking the seconds as they fell away. "I've always found chess to be the perfect metaphor for business," Victoria remarked, castle-side knight advancing. "Those who understand sacrifice prosper. Those who become attached to their pieces, their employees, inevitably fail. Marcus didn't respond. His focus narrowed to the 64 squares before him, the constellation of possibilities expanding with each move. His queen slid diagonally across the board, a quiet threat that made Victoria pause before her next move. "You play surprisingly well for a janitor," she said, voice tinged with something approaching respect. "Maintenance engineer," Marcus corrected automatically, taking her bishop with a precise strike. Victoria stiffened, mask slipping for just a moment as she surveyed the damage. She leaned forward, reassessing both the board and the man across from her. For the first time, she actually looked at him. The intelligent eyes, the methodical hands, the quiet dignity that no uniform could diminish. 12 minutes later, Victoria found herself staring at a board where her defenses had been systematically dismantled. Her king stood exposed, vulnerable, with Marcus's rook and knight closing in for the kill. The immaculate strategy she had deployed in countless executive chess matches lay in ruins around her. "Check," Marcus said quietly. Victoria's hand hovered over her king, trembling slightly as she sought an escape that didn't exist. The corporate warrior, who had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat, now found herself cornered by a man whose name she'd had to read off his badge. Outside her office door, assistants and executives waited with reports and concerns, unaware of the silent battle unfolding within. Victoria's schedule was precise, her time allocated in 15-minute blocks of productivity. She had allotted this chess match exactly 30 minutes, enough time to humiliate a maintenance worker and return to her real work. But as Marcus's first move toward checkmate became clear, Victoria Blackwood realized she had miscalculated badly. "Checkmate in 3 moves," Marcus said, his voice steady and quiet. Victoria's composure fractured. The boardroom predator, who had terminated entire departments without blinking, now stared at the board with unconcealed disbelief. Her fingers tightened around her king, knuckles whitening. "Impossible," she whispered, though the evidence lay before her in black and white. Marcus said nothing, allowing the silence to stretch between them. He had seen this moment before, the realization dawning in an opponent's eyes when they understood not only that defeat was inevitable, but that they had fundamentally misunderstood who they were playing against. Victoria looked up from the board, seeing Marcus read for the first time. Not the uniform, not the badge, but the man himself, the careful intelligence in his eyes, the stillness of his hands, the quiet dignity that no corporate hierarchy could diminish. "Who are you?" she asked, the question escaping before she could contain it. "Exactly who my badge says," Marcus replied. "Maintenance engineer, 7 years at Meridian. I also happen to play chess." Victoria's gaze flickered to the delicate watch on her wrist, a habit of control, of measuring time against productivity. The board meeting would begin in 45 minutes. The narrative she had planned for this encounter, a quick, humiliating defeat of a presumptuous janitor, had unraveled completely. "Taku, where did you learn to play like this?" she demanded, studying the board again, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "State champion New York, 1995 to 1998, Marcus replied without pride or apology. "I was on track for international competition before life took a different turn." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "And you ended up here, cleaning offices, maintaining systems?" He corrected again, his tone level. "My daughter got sick. Medical bills piled up. Chess doesn't come with health insurance." He gestured to the board. "Your move, Miss Blackwood." Victoria stared at her trapped king, then deliberately tipped it over. The piece rolled across the polished surface, surrendering with a soft click against Marcus's bishop. "You won," she acknowledged, her voice clipped. "I'll have HR arrange your salary adjustment effective next pay period." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Not just mine, everyone in maintenance. That was the agreement." "That would cost the company over $2 million annually," Victoria countered, calculation replacing shock. "The board would never approve such an expense without justification." "Then justify it," Marcus said simply. "You're the CEO. That's what they pay you for." Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You think business is like chess, that I can simply sacrifice one piece to save another?" She gestured toward the window, toward the gleaming tower that housed 3,000 employees. "Every decision affects shareholders, market position, quarterly projections." "I think," Marcus said carefully, that you made an offer because you were certain you couldn't lose. You wanted to teach me a lesson about knowing my place. He met her gaze directly, and instead, you learned something about assumptions. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Victoria Blackwood wasn't accustomed to being outmaneuvered, especially not by someone she considered irrelevant to the corporate ecosystem. Her mind raced through scenarios, calculating damage control options. Double the salaries would be financially irresponsible, she said finally, her tone shifting to something resembling negotiation. But I could reinstate the pension plan and authorize a 15% increase across your department. Marcus considered this, his expression unchanged. The pension plan with the original terms, not the reduced version, 20% increase, and the maintenance staff gets included in the annual bonus structure moving forward. Victoria's eyes widened fractionally at his counteroffer. This janitor was negotiating like a seasoned executive. 18% bonuses based on company performance metrics, capped at 5% of base salary, she returned. Agreed, Marcus said, extending his hand across the chessboard. Victoria hesitated for just a moment before taking it. His grip was firm, calloused, the hand of someone who worked with tools, not spreadsheets. Yet he had dismantled her defenses with the precision of a corporate raider. I'll have the paperwork drawn up tomorrow, she said, releasing his hand. Though I'm curious, how did you know I wouldn't simply refuse to honor our agreement after losing? Marcus smiled for the first time. Because you're ruthless, Miss Blackwood, not dishonorable. Those are different things. He began resetting the chess pieces, each one returning to its proper place. Besides, word would spread. The maintenance staff sees everything in this building, who stays late, who arrives early, who treats people poorly when they think no one important is watching. Victoria absorbed this, a new calculation forming behind her eyes. And they talk to you. We talk to each other, Marcus corrected, just like your executives do. Victoria studied him again, reassessing her initial dismissal. Mr. Reed, have you ever considered a position in operations management? Someone with your strategic thinking might be valuable in a different capacity. Marcus finished setting up the board, the pieces once again arrayed for battle. I've been offered management positions 3 times. I turned them down. Why? Victoria asked, genuinely puzzled. Because I'm good at what I do. The systems in this building work because people like me understand how they function from the ground up. He stood, straightening his gray uniform. Not everyone measures success by how many people they can order around. Victoria remained seated, a strange feeling settling over her, something between respect and discomfort. In her world, maintenance staff were budget line items, not strategic assets, certainly not chess masters with negotiation skill. Would you be interested in a rematch sometime? She asked suddenly, surprising herself with the question. Marcus paused at the door, considering. I'm in the 3rd floor recreation room most Thursdays during lunch. You're welcome to stop by. He nodded once, professionally. Thank you for your time, Ms. Blackwood. As the door closed behind him, Victoria turned to the immaculate chessboard. With careful fingers, she moved a white pawn forward, beginning a game against an invisible opponent. For the first time since taking the CEO position, her schedule lay forgotten on the desk beside her. On the other side of the door, Marcus exhaled slowly, the tension of the last hour releasing from his shoulders. He had come prepared for dismissal, maybe even termination. Instead, he was returning to his colleagues with their futures secured. He pulled out his phone to text his daughter the news as he walked toward the executive elevator, the one he was technically not supposed to use. Word spread through Meridian Technologies like electricity through a circuit. By morning, the story had transformed into corporate legend. The maintenance worker who had checkmated the Ice Queen CEO and won back the department's pensions. Each retelling added new details. Marcus had learned chess in prison. Victoria had thrown a crystal paperweight against the wall. The game had lasted 5 hours with executives lined up outside, waiting. The truth, as Marcus knew, was both simpler and more complex. 3 days after the match, Marcus was replacing air filters in the East Wing when his supervisor's voice crackled over his radio. Reed, You're wanted in conference room C now. The summons wasn't entirely unexpected. Despite Victoria Blackwood's verbal agreement, Marcus had been bracing himself for corporate backpedaling. Promises made in private often dissolved under budgetary scrutiny. Conference room C was on the executive floor, a glass-walled fishbowl where high-level strategy sessions unfolded daily. Marcus had cleaned it hundreds of times, but never attended a meeting inside. He straightened his uniform before entering, conscious of the stares from passing executives. Inside, Victoria Blackwood stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by men and women in tailored suits. Financial reports and projection charts covered the gleaming surface. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Reed, thank you for joining us," she said formally. "Please, take a seat." Marcus remained standing, just inside the doorway. "I'm still on shift, Ms. Blackwood. If this is about our agreement—" "It's not," she interrupted, "or rather, not directly. These are the department heads for operations, human resources, and finance." She gestured to the stern-faced executives around her. "We're discussing the implementation of your negotiated terms." Marcus felt the weight of their collective stares, some curious, others openly hostile. The finance director, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, tapped his tablet with obvious irritation. "As I was explaining to Ms. Blackwood before you arrived," he said, not bothering to introduce himself, "a 20% increase across maintenance plus pension reinstatement would severely impact our quarterly projections. We're suggesting a phased approach over 3 years. The agreement was immediate implementation." Victoria cut in, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Indeed, the question isn't whether we honor the terms, but how we adjust other expenditures to accommodate them." Marcus studied her, searching for the trap. The Victoria Blackwood from their chess match would never willingly relinquish control, especially not in front of her executive team. "Perhaps Mr. Reed could provide insight," Victoria continued, gesturing to an empty chair, "since his strategic thinking is clearly underutilized in his current position." The invitation hung in the air, a subtle recalibration of the room's power dynamics. Marcus hesitated, then slowly took the offered seat, acutely aware of his grey uniform amid the sea of designer suits. "The maintenance department has submitted the same budget request for upgraded equipment for the past 3 years," he said, addressing the group. "Each time, it's been denied. The older systems require more manpower and overtime to maintain, costing more in the long run than the initial investment would have." The operations director, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones, leaned forward. "You're suggesting the salary increases could be offset by equipment upgrades? That's counterintuitive. Not if you calculate 5-year operational costs instead of quarterly expenses," Marcus replied. He'd prepared these arguments for years, never imagining he'd deliver them in this room. Modern HVAC systems require fewer emergency repairs, use less energy, and can be monitored remotely, reducing overtime hours. Victoria watched the exchange with calculating eyes, saying nothing as Marcus outlined his proposal. The finance director's skepticism gradually shifted to reluctant consideration as Marcus walked them through specific cost projections. "You seem unusually well informed about operational budgeting for a maintenance worker," the HR director observed, her tone somewhere between accusation and curiosity. "I have a degree in systems engineering," Marcus replied evenly. "Before working here, I managed facilities for the state university system." The revelation rippled through the room. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. This was new information that hadn't appeared in their chess match conversation. "And you chose maintenance work instead?" the finance director asked incredulously. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "When my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia, I needed stable hours and comprehensive health coverage. Meridian offered both." He turned to Victoria. "And the same health plan your optimization initiative planned to reduce for non-executive staff." The room fell silent. Victoria tapped her pen against the table once, twice, then set it down decisively. "Mr. Reed has demonstrated that our approach to maintenance has been short-sighted," she announced. Implementing his equipment upgrade proposal alongside the negotiated compensation package will result in net operational savings within 26 months. She swept her gaze around the table, daring contradiction. None came. Draft the implementation plan by Friday, she instructed the team. Mr. Reed will review it before final approval. The meeting adjourned with the uncomfortable shuffle of executives processing their new reality. As they filed out, Victoria gestured for Marcus to remain. When they were alone, she studied him with new intensity. "You withheld relevant information during our game," she said, not a question but an observation. "You never asked about my background," Marcus replied. "You assumed. A tactical error on my part," she acknowledged. "One I won't make again." She circled the table, closing the distance between them. Up close, he could see the faint lines around her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights navigating corporate politics. "You could have applied for a management position at any time with your qualifications," she noted. "Why didn't you?" Marcus considered the question. "After my wife died and Emma got sick, priorities shifted. I needed certainty, not career advancement. And now?" Victoria asked. "Emma's in remission. Has been for 2 years." A small smile crossed his face. "She's actually the one who taught me that chess opening I used against you. Picked it up from watching online tournaments." Victoria's expression softened fractionally. "How old is she?" 16. "Planning to study computer science," Victoria nodded, processing this information with the same intensity she applied to quarterly reports. "I have a proposal for you, Mr. Reed, one that doesn't involve chess this time." "I'm listening." "We're creating a new position, Director of Facilities Operations and Sustainability, overseeing all building systems, maintenance staff, and implementing efficiency improvements company-wide." She handed him a folder. "The compensation package is outlined on page 3. It includes college tuition assistance benefits." Marcus opened the folder. The salary figure made him blink twice. "Oh, why me?" he asked, looking up. "You have hundreds of MBA graduates fighting for director positions." Victoria's answer was immediate. "Because you understand systems from the ground up. Because you see 3 moves ahead when others are focused on the immediate play." Her lips curved in what might have been a genuine smile. "And because anyone who can negotiate with me after winning a chess match is someone I want in my executive meetings." Marcus closed the folder. "I'll need to discuss it with Emma." "Of course." Victoria extended her hand. "In the meantime, I believe you mentioned being in the recreation room on Thursdays." Marcus took her hand, the gesture now one between equals. "Is the CEO of Meridian Technologies challenging me to a rematch?" "Not a rematch," Victoria corrected. "A new game with different stakes." As Marcus left the conference room, folder tucked under his arm, he realized that their chess match had been merely the opening gambit in a much longer game, one where the board had expanded beyond 64 squares to encompass the entire company. Thursday arrived, and with it, the lunch hour that had become a quiet sanctuary in Marcus's routine for years. The recreation room on the 3rd floor was tucked away from the main thoroughfares of Meridian Technologies, a forgotten space that had survived multiple renovations due to its inconvenient location and outdated furnishings. The room held 4 mismatched couches, a scarred pool table missing the 7-ball, 2 vending machines that occasionally stole dollars, and in the corner by the window, a small table with a chess set. The pieces were standard plastic, the board a vinyl rollout mat with fraying edges. Nothing like Victoria Blackwood's luxurious rosewood set. Marcus arrived at his usual time, 12:15, after the initial lunch rush had cleared. He carried his insulated lunch bag and a dog-eared paperback, a biography of Mikhail Tal, the magician of Riga, famous for his sacrificial attacking style. Marcus set up the pieces methodically, white on his side as always, then unwrapped his sandwich and opened his book. At precisely 12:30, the recreation room door opened. Victoria Blackwood stood in the doorway, holding a sleek leather portfolio in one hand and a minimalist stainless steel lunch container in the other. The room's usual occupants, two IT specialists playing pool and a marketing intern scrolling through her phone, froze, staring at the CEO as if a tiger had wandered in from the urban jungle outside. "Mr. Reed," Victoria acknowledged, crossing to his table with measured step. She wore a charcoal pencil skirt and a deep blue blouse that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. "I hope I'm not interrupting." The IT specialists exchanged wide-eyed glances before gathering their things and retreating. The marketing intern remained, pretending to be invisible, while obviously straining to hear every word. "Not at all," Marcus replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Though I admit I half expected you to send a message cancelling." Victoria set down her lunch container and portfolio. "I honor my commitments, Mr. Reed." She studied the chess set with a slight frown. "These pieces have seen better days." "They work just fine," Marcus said, offering her the white pieces. "Would you like to start?" Victoria shook her head. "You earned white. I'll take black this time." As Marcus made his opening move, pawn to d4 rather than e4, a subtle shift in strategy, Victoria opened her lunch container, revealing an immaculate salad arranged with architectural precision. "Have you considered my offer?" she asked, moving her knight in response. "I have," Marcus replied, advancing another pawn. "I've discussed it with Emma, and she thinks I should take it. Says it's about time I leveled up." He smiled slightly at his daughter's gaming terminology. "She's already researching colleges with the tuition assistance in mind." Victoria nodded, her focus divided between their conversation and the developing position on the board. "Smart girl. The package I offered is standard for director level, but I could adjust the educational benefits if necessary." Marcus captured one of her pawns, the plastic piece making a dull click against the vinyl board. "The package is more than generous." "That's not my hesitation." Victoria looked up from the board, her eyes narrowing. "Then what is?" Marcus considered his words carefully as Victoria recaptured with her bishop, initiating a complex exchange in the center of the board. "I've spent 7 years in maintenance. I know those people, their families, their struggles, their capabilities. If I move to management, I'll be expected to see them as resources, not colleagues." Victoria's next move came swiftly, aggressive and unexpected. Queen to h5. Threatening a discovered check. "That's a narrow view of management, Mr. Reed. The best leaders see their teams as people first, resources second. Is that how you operate?" Marcus asked, moving his king to safety. Victoria's hand hesitated over her next piece, the question clearly striking a nerve. "I'm responsible for 3,000 employees and billions in shareholder value. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions, like cutting pensions for the lowest paid workers while approving executive bonuses." The words weren't accusatory, simply a statement of fact. Victoria's eyes flashed. "Those decisions were based on comparative market analysis and retention strategies for key personnel." "I understand the logic," Marcus replied, advancing his knight. "I'm questioning the values beneath it." Their game accelerated, pieces dancing across the board in an intricate pattern of threat and counter-threat. This match was different from their first, less about dominance, more about exploration, each player testing the other's boundaries and principles through the proxy of carved plastic. "You think I lack empathy," Victoria observed, sacrificing a bishop to strengthen her position. "I think corporate culture rewards its absence," Marcus countered, accepting the sacrifice but wary of the trap it might conceal. "The maintenance staff aren't just budget line items. Carlos is putting 2 kids through community college. Diane's caring for her mother with Alzheimer's. Miguel's working toward his contractor's license." Victoria studied the board, then looked up at Marcus with new understanding. "And you feel responsible for them." "We look out for each other," he corrected. "And it's something I'm not willing to sacrifice for a title and a bigger paycheck." The marketing intern had long since abandoned the pretense of not listening, her phone forgotten in her hand as the conversation unfolded. Victoria moved her queen in a subtle attack. What if the position included oversight of employment policies, influence over compensation structures, working conditions, advancement opportunities? Marcus countered her queen's advance. You're offering me a seat at the table. I'm offering you a voice in the room where decisions are made, Victoria clarified. You've shown me a blind spot in my approach. I'm addressing it. The admission clearly cost her. Victoria Blackwood wasn't known for acknowledging weaknesses or changing course once committed. Why? Marcus asked directly, their game momentarily forgotten. Why does my perspective suddenly matter? Victoria met his gaze, her composure professional, but something more authentic beneath it. Because in 3 minutes of chess, you showed more strategic thinking than most of my MBA-educated team demonstrates in month-long planning sessions. Because you negotiated terms for your colleagues before yourself. And because she hesitated, then continued with reluctant honesty. You're the first person since I took this position who has spoken to me as a person rather than a power to be feared or leveraged. The recreation room fell completely silent. Even the humming vending machines seemed to hold their breath. Marcus reached forward and moved his rook, creating a fork that threatened both her queen and king simultaneously. Check, he said quietly. Victoria examined the board, then smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from corporate mask to something warmer, more human. Well played. She moved her king out of danger, sacrificing her queen in the process. But the game isn't over yet. As they continued playing, their conversation shifted to specific ideas for Meridian's operations, energy efficiency upgrades, cross-training programs between departments, apprenticeship opportunities for local community colleges. With each exchange on the board, the dynamic between them evolved from adversaries to potential allies. I believe that's checkmate in 6 moves, Marcus finally said, indicating the inevitable conclusion on the board. Victoria studied the position, then nodded in acknowledgement. So it is. She extended her hand across the table. Congratulations, Mr. Reed. Again, as they shook hands, Marcus made his decision. I'll accept the position, Miss Blackwood, with one condition. Which is, I want to build a mentorship program for maintenance staff, career advancement pathways, tuition assistance, technical certification. Not everyone wants to move to management, but everyone deserves the opportunity to grow. Victoria considered this, then nodded once. Decisively. Draft a proposal. We'll implement it alongside your transition. As she gathered her things to leave, Victoria glanced at the chessboard one last time. Same time next week. I believe I'm improving. Marcus smiled. I look forward to it. The marketing intern finally remembered to breathe as the CEO departed, her fingers flying across her phone screen. By end of day, the story of the lunchtime chess match would join the growing legend spreading through Meridian's corridors. How the Ice Queen had offered the chessmaster Janitor a director position. How they'd discussed company policy over plastic pieces and homemade sandwiches. How something fundamental was shifting in the tower's carefully ordered hierarchy. The transition from maintenance engineer to director of facilities operations wasn't immediate. Corporate bureaucracy moved with glacial precision. Paperwork processed, interviews conducted as formality, background checks completed despite Marcus's 7 years with the company. The Human Resources Department seemed particularly determined to verify the engineering degree he'd mentioned, as if they suspected him of crafting an elaborate fiction. In the 3 weeks following his acceptance of Victoria's offer, Marcus continued his maintenance duties while attending executive orientation sessions in the afternoons. He moved between worlds, replacing air filters in the morning, discussing 5-year capital expenditure plans after lunch. The contrast was jarring, illuminating the invisible barriers that had always divided Meridian's workforce. His maintenance colleagues watched this metamorphosis with mixed reactions: pride, confusion, thinly veiled envy. Some treated him differently immediately, their language more formal, their jokes more restrained. Others, like Carlos, who had worked alongside him for 6 years, maintained the easy camaraderie they'd always shared. "So you'll be wearing fancy suits now?" Carlos asked, as they repaired a stubborn compressor unit on the roof. "Trading your toolkit for a leather briefcase." Marcus tightened a fitting, his hands still confident with the wrench. "I'm keeping my tools," he replied, "and I don't own a suit." "You'll need one," Carlos laughed. "Those executive floors are like costume parties. Everyone dressed the same, pretending they're not watching each other." Marcus wiped hydraulic fluid from his hands. "I'm still me, Carlos." "Different title, same priorities?" Carlos nodded, but his eyes held reservation. That's what everyone says at first. Then the lunches start, the meetings, the politics. He reconnected a sensor cable with practiced precision. Soon you're speaking their language, seeing things their way. The observation hit uncomfortably close to Marcus's own concerns. He'd already noticed subtle changes in his thinking, calculating ROI on equipment upgrades rather than just their practical impact, considering labor hours as financial units rather than people's time. "That's why I need people like you to keep me grounded," Marcus said. "Call me out if I start sounding like them," Carlos grinned. "Oh, I will. First time you use synergy in a sentence, I'm dumping coolant in your fancy office." Their laughter carried across the rooftop, but the underlying truth remained. Marcus was crossing a boundary few ever traversed, from the invisible workforce to the decision maker. The journey would transform him one way or another. On Friday afternoon, Marcus cleared out his maintenance locker. The small metal cabinet had held his life for 7 years. Spare uniform, family photos, protein bars, the mechanical pencils Emma insisted he use for his building system sketches. As he packed these modest belongings into a cardboard box, he felt the weight of departure more keenly than anticipated. Diane from the night crew had organized a small gathering in the maintenance break room. Grocery store cake, balloons taped to the wall, a card signed by everyone in the department. The celebration was heartfelt, but tinged with uncertainty. No one quite knew how to mark this transition. Was it a promotion, a defection, or something else entirely? "Speech!" Miguel called out as Marcus cut the cake bearing congratulations in bright blue frosting. Marcus shook his head, uncomfortable with the attention. "No speeches. I'm just moving upstairs, not leaving the country." "You're going behind enemy lines," Diane joked, though her eyes were serious. "Bringing our concerns to the ivory tower." "I'll still be around," Marcus promised. "Or my office door will always be open to any of you." Later that evening, after the cake was reduced to crumbs and the well-wishes exchanged, Marcus took one final walk through the building's mechanical spaces, the humming machinery, the labyrinth of pipes, the electrical panels. This had been his domain, a world he understood completely. He ran his hand along a recently installed condenser unit, feeling its vibrations, listening to its steady rhythm. These systems spoke a language he'd mastered long ago. The executive floors, with their politics and power plays, operated by different rules. Rules he'd have to learn quickly. Monday morning arrived with new territory. Marcus stood outside his assigned office on the 47th floor, keycard in hand, hesitating before the frosted glass door bearing his name and title in sleek silver letters. The hallway around him pulsed with purposeful activity. Executives striding between meetings, assistants carrying tablets and coffee, the quiet hum of important conversations behind closed doors. He wore a new suit, charcoal gray, conservatively cut but quality material. Emma had insisted on accompanying him shopping, rejecting his initial selections with teenage certainty. "No, Dad, that one makes you look like you're going to a funeral," she'd declared, pulling a different jacket from the rack. "You want to look confident but not trying too hard, like you belong but you're not impressed by it." Her assessment of corporate aesthetics was surprisingly astute for a 16-year-old. The suit they'd selected projected exactly the image Marcus needed: professional without pretension, authoritative without arrogance. He swiped his keycard and entered his new professional home. The office was larger than he'd expected, corner placement with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city and harbor beyond. Minimalist furniture in brushed steel and dark wood created a space that was impressive without being ostentatious. On the credenza behind the desk sat a small package wrapped in simple white paper. Marcus set down his box of personal items and picked up the package. The card attached bore only his name in precise handwriting. Inside was a chess set, not an expensive luxury version like Victoria's, but a travel magnetic set, compact and functional. A note accompanied it: "For our continuing matches, my office Thursday lunch. BB, he smiled, placing the chess set on his desk, then began arranging his few belongings. Emma's photo, his dog-eared reference books on building systems, the mechanical pencils in their worn case. These touchstones of his previous life seemed almost incongruous in the sleek, executive space. A soft knock interrupted his settling in. Harriet Chen, the operations director he'd met during the conference room meeting, stood in his doorway. "Welcome to the 47th floor, Marcus," she said, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. "The executive committee has a strategy session in 30 minutes. Victoria thought you should attend." Marcus nodded, recognizing the summons for what it was. His first test. "I'll be there." As Harriet left, Marcus opened his laptop. New, high-end, another symbol of his changed status. He quickly reviewed the company's latest quarterly projections, preparing himself for the meeting ahead. The numbers were familiar. He'd studied them before accepting the position, but the perspective was different now. These weren't abstract figures. They were resources he would help allocate, decisions he would influence. At 9:30 precisely, Marcus entered Meridian's main boardroom. The executive team was already assembled. 12 men and women in similar suits around a massive table, tablets and coffee cups precisely arranged before them. Victoria sat at the head, her posture perfect, her expression neutral, as Marcus took the only empty seat. "Mr. Reed will be joining our strategic planning sessions moving forward," she announced without preamble. "His unique perspective on our operational infrastructure will be valuable as we implement the sustainability initiatives outlined in Section 3 of your briefing packets." The finance director, Gilbert Thompson, Marcus had learned his name, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses with obvious skepticism. "I'm curious, Mr. Reed, how you would approach the capital expenditure estimates for the HVAC overhaul. The projections seem optimistic." It was a test, a subtle challenge to his legitimacy in this room. Marcus felt 11 pairs of eyes on him, measuring, assessing. He opened his briefing packet to the relevant section, quickly scanning numbers that translated in his mind to specific systems and equipment. "They're not optimistic, they're accurate," he replied with quiet confidence. "The estimates come from contractors who overcharge because they assume you don't understand the actual requirements. I've recalculated based on industry standards and removed the padding." He turned to page 17. Where a detailed breakdown showed the revised figures. "We can reduce these estimates by 22% without compromising quality or longevity. I've worked with these systems for 7 years. I know exactly what they need and what they don't." A subtle shift occurred around the table. Raised eyebrows, recalculating gazes. Victoria watched this exchange with the faintest smile playing at the corner of her mouth, like a chess player seeing her strategy unfold, exactly as planned. The meeting proceeded, and with each comment Marcus offered, each question he answered, the initial skepticism in the room gradually transformed into reluctant respect. He wasn't playing their game by their rules, he was changing the parameters, introducing practical knowledge that couldn't be dismissed or explained away with management theory. As the meeting concluded, Victoria caught his eye across the table and gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. First move, well played. By his 3rd week in the executive suite, Marcus had established a rhythm. Mornings were dedicated to facilities oversight, reviewing maintenance logs, conducting system audits, developing upgrade proposals. Afternoons shifted to strategic planning, budget meetings, sustainability initiatives, presentations to various departments. The dual nature of his role became his strength. When executives argued that certain maintenance requests were unnecessary, Marcus could explain exactly how deferring repairs would impact operations. When contractors submitted inflated bids, Marcus knew precisely which components were overpriced. His knowledge bridged the gap between the boardroom and the boiler room, creating unprecedented efficiencies. Yet, the transition wasn't without friction. Harriet Chen from operations maintained a professional skepticism, questioning his recommendations in meetings with pointed precision. Gilbert Thompson from finance scrutinized his budget requests with extra vigor. Several middle managers who had applied for his position made their resentment clear through passive-aggressive emails and forgotten meeting invitations. Victoria watched these dynamics unfold without intervention. Observing how Marcus navigated the corporate minefield, their weekly chess matches continued. The conference room traded for her private office with its sweeping views of the harbor. These hours became an oasis of direct communication in a desert of corporate doublespeak. "Thompson is blocking my equipment requisitions again," Marcus said, advancing his knight in an aggressive opening gambit. "Declaims the replacement chillers exceed capital expenditure guidelines." Victoria moved her bishop, countering his advance. "Gilbert protects the budget like a mother bear with cubs. It's his job." "It's wasteful," Marcus replied. "The energy savings would offset the cost within 18 months. I've shown him the calculations 3 times. Have you asked him why he's really objecting?" Victoria captured one of his pawns, her strategy methodical as always. Marcus paused, his hand hovering over the board. "What do you mean?" "Gilbert approved a similar request from IT last quarter, with half the ROI you're projecting." Victoria's gaze was steady. "This isn't about numbers." Understanding dawned. "It's about me. He doesn't think I belong in the decision-making circle. You bypassed 15 years of corporate ladder climbing to reach director level. That creates discomfort." Victoria gestured toward the chessboard. "Your move, both here and with Gilbert." Marcus studied the position, seeing parallels between the board and his professional challenges. "I need to change my approach. Stop trying to overwhelm him with technical data and address the underlying concern." Victoria's smile was subtle but approving. "Precisely." The next day, Marcus asked Gilbert to lunch. They walked to a small cafe 2 blocks from Meridian Tower, away from the corporate environment, where roles and hierarchies were rigidly defined. Over sandwiches, Marcus steered the conversation away from budget requests and toward Gilbert's 22 years with the company. "You've seen a lot of changes," Marcus observed. 5 CEOs, market crashes, technological revolution. Gilbert seemed surprised by the interest. "I've weathered my share of storms. Started in accounting before most of these young hotshots were born." "That perspective is invaluable," Marcus said sincerely. "You've prevented countless financial missteps over the years. Someone has to be the adult in the room," Gilbert replied, though his tone had softened. "These executives with their MBAs think they know everything because they can build a fancy spreadsheet." "I feel the same way about contractors," Marcus admitted. "They throw around technical jargon assuming no one will question their assessments." By the time they returned to the office, a subtle shift had occurred. Gilbert had recognized a kindred spirit, someone who valued expertise and precision, who understood that flashy presentations often disguised mediocre substance. The following day, Marcus's equipment requisitions were approved without comment. Victoria observed this diplomatic victory from a distance, neither congratulating nor acknowledging it directly. But during their next chess match, she played with increased aggression, testing his adaptability with unexpected sacrifices and bold attacks. "You're playing differently today," Marcus noted, defending against her surprisingly reckless bishop advance. "As are you," Victoria replied. "And with Gilbert, with the Sustainability Committee, with the contractor negotiations, you're becoming more strategic." "Is that approval I hear?" Marcus captured her overextended bishop. "Observation," Victoria corrected, though a hint of something warmer colored her voice. "The question is whether you can maintain your principles while mastering these new strategies." It was a concern that had kept Marcus awake at night. Each week seemed to pull him further from his maintenance roots, from the practical realities of the building's operations. His calendar filled with meetings about market positioning and shareholder value, concepts divorced from the tangible systems he'd spent his career maintaining. "I visited the maintenance department yesterday," Marcus said, advancing his queen. "Carlos showed me the new team rotation he's implemented. It's working well." "And how did they receive you?" Victoria asked, her focus on the board unwavering. "Differently, more formally." Marcus frowned slightly. "There's a distance now. Inevitable," Victoria said. "Authority creates separation." "It shouldn't have to." Victoria looked up from the board, studying him with unexpected intensity. "Ooh, you still see yourself as one of them." "I was one of them 3 weeks ago," Marcus pointed out. "That doesn't change because of a job title." "But it does change," Victoria insisted. "Power transforms relationships, Marcus. The sooner you accept that reality, the more effectively you can use your position." "To what end?" Marcus asked, the question hanging between them as their game progressed into a complex middle phase. Victoria didn't answer immediately, her attention returning to the chess pieces. They played in silence for several moves, the quiet broken only by the soft click of pieces against the board. I received the proposal for your mentorship program, she finally said. The board has approved a pilot version starting next quarter. Marcus looked up in surprise. The mentorship program had been his condition for accepting the director position, a structured pathway for maintenance staff to advance their careers through technical certification and specialized training. He'd submitted a detailed proposal, but had heard nothing for weeks. Thank you, he said simply. Don't thank me. It was approved on its merits. Victoria captured his rook with a deft move. Your approach is sound, identifying high-potential employees from overlooked departments, providing them with growth opportunities, creating internal advancement pathways. It makes business sense. It's also the right thing to do, Marcus added. Victoria's expression remained neutral. In this case, ethical principles and business strategy align. That's not always true. When they don't align, which takes priority? Marcus asked, sensing they were discussing something more fundamental than chess or corporate program. Victoria studied the board, considering her next move carefully. That depends on one's definition of business strategy. Short-term profit often conflicts with ethical considerations. Long-term sustainability rarely does. Is that why you agreed to reinstate the pension plan after our first match? Long-term thinking. Victoria's hand hesitated over a pawn. I agreed, because you outplayed me, and I honor my commitments. She moved the piece forward. But yes, upon reflection, the decision serves Meridian's long-term interests. Employee loyalty and institutional knowledge are undervalued assets in modern corporate accounting. Marcus captured her advancing pawn. Check. Victoria moved her king out of danger. You're 3 moves from checkmate, she observed, studying the board with analytical detachment. I've miscalculated again. Not miscalculated, Marcus corrected, just focused on the wrong threat. You've been defending against my queen, while my knights have been positioning for the real attack. A ghost of a smile crossed Victoria's face, a metaphor for our working relationship, perhaps. As they reset the board, Victoria's assistant appeared at the door with an apologetic expression. Miss Blackwood, the call with Tokyo can't be rescheduled. They're waiting in the conference room. Victoria nodded, the brief moment of connection receding behind her professional mask. Same time next week, Mr. Reed. I'll be here, Marcus confirmed, returning the chess pieces to their travel case. As he walked back to his office, Marcus reflected on their conversation. Victoria Blackwood remained an enigma, a corporate warrior capable of cutting entire departments without hesitation, yet also capable of approving progressive initiatives that challenged Meridian's traditional hierarchy. Which was the real Victoria? The ruthless CEO or the strategic reformer? Perhaps both existed simultaneously, like quantum states that shifted depending on the observer. What remained constant was her brilliant mind, her unwavering focus, and her growing respect for the former maintenance worker who had matched her move for move, both on the chessboard and in the corporate arena. 2 months into his new role, Marcus faced his first true crisis. At 3:17 a.m., his phone erupted with urgent alerts. The primary cooling system for Meridian's data center had failed catastrophically, threatening millions in server equipment and potentially compromising client data. Backup systems had engaged, but were already showing strain under the increased load. Marcus was dressed and in his car within 5 minutes, the familiar surge of adrenaline carrying him back to a world he understood perfectly. By the time he arrived at Meridian Tower, the night maintenance crew had established an emergency protocol. Carlos was already there, having been called in from home, his experienced hands working to reroute coolant flow while consulting system schematics. Pressure valve ruptured on the main loop, Carlos explained, as Marcus joined him in the basement mechanical room. Manufacturing defect from that new supplier finance insisted we use. Marcus recognized the implied criticism, but set it aside. What's our timeline? Backup system is holding, but it's pushing capacity. We've got maybe 4 hours before critical servers start overheating. Carlos wiped sweat from his forehead. We need a replacement valve, but nothing's open until morning. Marcus nodded, already calculating options. Call Miguel. He worked at Westlake Tower before joining us. Their system is compatible with ours. As Carlos made the call, Marcus contacted the night security team at Westlake, leveraging Meridian's business relationship to secure an emergency equipment loan. While they waited for Miguel to retrieve the part, Marcus joined the maintenance team in the server room, helping to set up portable cooling units to buy precious time. He worked alongside his former colleagues, the suit exchanged for the grey uniform he kept in his office for system inspection. The familiar rhythm of troubleshooting and repair settled over him, a language of pressure gauges and flow rates, of thermal dynamics and electrical loads. This was the work his hands knew, the problems his mind had been trained to solve. By dawn, the crisis had been averted. The borrowed valve was installed, systems stabilized, and servers preserved. As the maintenance team began cleanup, Marcus noticed Victoria Blackwood standing in the doorway of the mechanical room, observing the scene with unreadable eyes. "Walk with me," she said simply, turning without waiting for his response. They took the elevator to the executive floor in silence. The building was still largely empty, the early morning light casting long shadows through the windows. Victoria led him to her office, closing the door behind them. "Explain what happened," she said, taking her seat behind the desk. Marcus remained standing, aware of his rumpled appearance, shirt sleeves rolled up, hands still bearing traces of mechanical grease. "Pressure valve failure in the primary cooling system. We secured a replacement from Westlake Tower and installed it. Cost of potential damage. If the servers had gone down, millions in equipment, plus incalculable data loss and client confidence." Victoria nodded once. "And the cause?" "The valve was from Precision Engineering. Finance approved them as a supplier last quarter because their bid was 20% lower than our previous vendor. Gilbert's cost-cutting initiative," Victoria observed, her tone neutral. "Yes," Victoria studied him for a moment. "You don't seem surprised." "I flagged concerns about their quality control during the vendor review," Marcus replied. "The documentation showed inconsistent material testing. I don't recall seeing that assessment. It was in the appendix of my report. Page 47. Marcus met her gaze directly. Most people don't read appendices. A flicker of something. Perhaps respect, perhaps irritation crossed Victoria's face. "What's your recommendation?" "Return to our previous supplier for critical components. Implement a more rigorous testing protocol for all new vendors. Establish redundant inventory for essential parts." Victoria considered this, then reached for her tablet. "Draft a memo outlining these recommendations by noon. Copy the executive committee." Marcus nodded, recognizing dismissal. As he turned to leave, Victoria added, "One more thing, Mr. Reed." He paused at the door. "You were in the mechanical room at 4 a.m. doing hands-on repair work," she observed. "That's not typically within a director's responsibilities." Marcus considered his response carefully. "With respect, Miss Blackwood, I know those systems better than anyone. In a crisis, you deploy your best resources, even if it means getting your hands dirty." There was a challenge in her question, though her expression remained unreadable. "Especially then," Marcus replied. "Some problems can't be solved from behind a desk." Victoria studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Good work, Mr. Reed. Get some rest. We'll continue our chess match tomorrow." As Marcus returned to his office to change, he reflected on the exchange. Victoria hadn't criticized his direct involvement, a notable departure from traditional executive expectations. Perhaps she understood something fundamental about leadership that many of her peers missed. True authority came from competence, not position. The memo he drafted that morning went beyond immediate recommendations. It outlined a comprehensive approach to infrastructure resilience, balancing cost efficiency with system integrity, establishing clear quality standards, and implementing validation protocols. He included detailed technical specifications alongside executive summaries, bridging the gap between operational reality and management oversight. When he sent the document to the executive committee at 11:47 a.m., he copied Carlos and the maintenance team as well, a small but significant acknowledgement of their essential role in the organization. By afternoon, his inbox filled with responses. Gilbert from finance offered offered a reluctant apology for overriding the vendor concerns. Harriet from operations proposed a joint task force to review all critical systems. Most surprisingly, Victoria forwarded his memo to the entire company with a brief note. This is the standard of excellence Meridian should aspire to, VB. That evening, as Marcus finally headed home after a 20-hour day, he found Carlos waiting in the parking garage. "Heard about your memo," Carlos said, leaning against a concrete pillar. "Maintenance team's talking about it. Never had an executive actually give us credit before." Marcus shrugged, exhaustion settling into his bones. "Just telling the truth. Truth doesn't usually make it past the executive floor," Carlos observed. "This is different." He straightened, expression serious. "Some of us were wrong about you, Marcus. We thought you'd go up there and become one of them. Forget where you came from." "I'm still me, Carlos." "Yeah, you are." Carlos extended his hand. "And that matters more than you know." The handshake felt like reconciliation, an acknowledgement that Marcus hadn't abandoned his former colleagues by accepting promotion. He had instead brought their perspective to heights it rarely reached. The following day's chess match with Victoria took on new significance. As they set up the pieces in her office, Marcus sensed a subtle shift in their dynamic. "You've earned considerable goodwill with the maintenance department," Victoria noted, arranging her black pieces with precise movements, "and respect from the executive committee." "Not what I was aiming for," Marcus replied honestly. "Just trying to prevent the next crisis. Prevention rarely gets noticed. Crisis management does." Victoria made her opening move, pawn to d4, mirroring his usual strategy. "You handled both effectively." Marcus advanced his knight rather than a pawn, an unexpected opening. "The maintenance team did the actual repair work. I just facilitated and drafted a memo that's being circulated as a model of comprehensive analysis." Victoria countered his knight development with her own. "Don't diminish your contribution, Marcus. False modesty is as unattractive as arrogance." The direct criticism surprised him. Victoria rarely offered personal observations during their matches. Their conversation typically centered on strategy, both on the board and within the company. "Point taken," he acknowledged, advancing a pawn to support his knight's position. They played in companionable silence for several moves, the game evolving into a complex positional struggle. Victoria played with unusual aggression, sacrificing material for attacking chances, while Marcus maintained a solid defensive structure. "Your daughter's science project won the regional competition," Victoria said suddenly, capturing one of his pawns. Marcus looked up, startled. "How did you know about that?" "It was in the local paper. Emma Reed advances to state finals with innovative energy conservation model." Victoria's expression remained neutral, though her eyes held something warmer. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Marcus moved his bishop to block her advancing queen. "She's brilliant. Wants to study environmental engineering. The tuition assistance in your compensation package will cover her undergraduate studies completely," Victoria noted. "I made sure of it when structuring the offer." Marcus stared at her, processing the implication. "You researched my family situation before offering me the position." "Of course." Victoria's tone suggested this was obvious. "I needed to understand your motivation. What would matter to you? What would keep you loyal to Meridian?" The strategic calculation behind her generosity should have disturbed him. Instead, Marcus found himself appreciating her thoroughness. Victoria Blackwood didn't make decisions based on momentary impulse or emotion. She played the long game, considering multiple moves ahead, in chess and in business. "Check," he said, moving his knight into a threatening position. Victoria studied the board, then moved her king to safety. "You're developing a reputation, Marcus. The executive who rolls up his sleeves, the chess master from maintenance, the advocate for overlooked talent. Is that a problem?" "It's leverage," Victoria replied. "Use it wisely." As their game concluded in a rare draw, both kings surrounded by defensive formations that neither could penetrate, Marcus realized that his position at Meridian had fundamentally changed. The crisis and its resolution had solidified his unique role, a bridge between worlds that had previously existed in parallel but separate realities. "Same time next week?" Victoria asked as they reset the board. Actually, Marcus said, I'd like to propose something different. Our next match should be in the third-floor recreation room, on the vinyl board with the plastic pieces. Victoria's eyebrow arched in surprise. Why? Because some battles should be fought on neutral ground, Marcus replied. Away from corner offices and executive privileges. Victoria considered this, then nodded once. Agreed. But I expect the same level of play, regardless of the setting. Always, Marcus promised, knowing they were discussing far more than chess. The recreation room fell silent when Victoria Blackwood stepped through the door the following Thursday at precisely 12:15. The usual lunchtime occupants, IT specialists, junior analysts, administrative staff, froze in mid-conversation, their sandwiches and salads momentarily forgotten. The CEO of Meridian Technologies simply didn't appear in employee break areas, especially not ones with decades-old furniture and flickering fluorescent lighting. Victoria, dressed in a tailored navy suit that likely cost more than most employees' monthly salaries, surveyed the room with calm detachment. If she noticed the stunned stares or whispered comments, she gave no indication. She simply walked to the chess table in the corner where Marcus waited, the vinyl board already set up. Mr. Reed, she acknowledged, taking the seat across from him. Ms. Blackwood, he returned with a slight smile. White or black? Black, she decided, turning the board. You earned white with your handling of the cooling system crisis. Around them, the recreation room gradually returned to life, though conversations remained hushed, attention repeatedly drifting toward the unlikely chess match unfolding in the corner. Word spread quickly through the building. The CEO was playing chess in the employee break room with the former janitor who'd become a director. By 12:30, people from other floors had invented reasons to visit the third floor, casually passing the recreation room doorway for a glimpse of this corporate unicorn. Victoria seemed oblivious to the attention, her focus entirely on the board as the game progressed. But Marcus knew better. Nothing escaped Victoria Blackwood's notice, especially not the strategic implications of being seen in this setting. You're making a statement, he observed quietly, advancing his bishop. As are you, she countered, capturing a pawn. That was your intention in suggesting this venue, wasn't it? Marcus nodded, acknowledging the truth. The executive floor and the maintenance department exist in separate universes. This is neutral territory. There's no such thing as neutral territory in a corporate hierarchy, Victoria replied, though without bitterness. But visibility has value. The game proceeded at a measured pace, both players contemplating each move carefully. They were evenly matched now, Victoria having studied Marcus's strategies over their weeks of play. The aggressive openings that had once surprised her were now anticipated and countered with equally bold responses. Your mentorship program launches next week, Victoria noted, castling her king to safety. The candidates have been selected. Yes, 5 from maintenance, 3 from mail services, 2 from food service. Marcus moved his knight to a more aggressive position. All high-potential employees with limited advancement opportunities in their current roles, and the executive mentors. Still finalizing, Marcus admitted. Harriet has agreed to participate. Gilbert is considering it. Victoria nodded, studying the board. Add me to the list. Marcus looked up in surprise. You want to mentor someone from maintenance? I want to mentor someone with potential, Victoria corrected. Department is irrelevant. The statement hung between them, charged with significance. Victoria Blackwood, who had built her reputation on ruthless efficiency and unsentimental decision-making, was voluntarily connecting herself to an initiative designed to elevate employees from the lowest ranks of the corporate hierarchy. Thank you, Marcus said simply. Victoria's response was interrupted by a commotion at the recreation room entrance. James Porter, Meridian's silver-haired chairman of the board, stood in the doorway, his imposing figure flanked by 2 nervous-looking assistants. His presence on the third floor was even more unprecedented than Victoria's. Porter rarely left the executive suites except for client meetings or media appearances. Victoria, he called across the room, his authoritative voice silencing all other conversations. I've been looking for you. We need to discuss the Singapore acquisition immediately. Victoria didn't look up from the the chessboard. "I'm in a meeting, James." Porter's eyebrows rose toward his hairline. "A meeting here?" "Yes." Victoria captured Marcus's knight with a precise movement. "Mr. Reed and I are discussing strategic initiatives." Porter's gaze shifted to Marcus, taking in his appearance, the suit that was quality but not bespoke, the hands that, despite meticulous grooming, still bore the calluses of physical labor. His expression hardened. "The board members are waiting in conference room A," Porter said, his tone making it clear this was not a request. "The Singapore deal needs your immediate attention." Victoria finally looked up, her face composed but eyes sharp. "Tell them I'll join shortly. Mr. Reed and I need to finish our current discussion." The power dynamic crackled like static electricity. Porter was technically Victoria's superior as chairman, but she was the operational leader of Meridian, the architect of their recent successes, and the public face of the company. His authority existed in board votes and shareholder meetings. Hers permeated every aspect of daily operation. After a tense moment, Porter nodded curtly and departed, leaving a wake of whispers and wide eyes among the recreation room occupants. "Singapore acquisition?" Marcus asked quietly, returning his attention to the game. "Meridian is purchasing a technology firm specializing in energy management systems," Victoria explained, her voice equally low. "The announcement goes public tomorrow." Marcus nodded, processing the implications for his department. "You should go. The board shouldn't be kept waiting on my account." Victoria studied him briefly, then turned her attention back to the chessboard. "We have 11 minutes remaining in our scheduled meeting. The board can wait." She gestured to the position. "Your move." The statement was delivered without emphasis, but its significance wasn't lost on Marcus, or on the employees still watching from around the room. Victoria Blackwood, known for her rigorous adherence to schedule and protocol, was prioritizing a chess game with a former maintenance worker over a board meeting about a major acquisition. They played in focused silence for the remaining time, the game reaching a critical middle phase where each move carried strategic weight for the endgame. At precisely 1 p.m., Victoria captured Marcus's remaining bishop, creating a decisive advantage. "I believe that's checkmate in 7 moves," she observed. Marcus studied the board, calculating possibilities, then nodded in acknowledgement. "Well played." Victoria rose, straightening her suit jacket with a practiced movement. "Same time next week, Mr. Reed." "Looking forward to it," Marcus confirmed. As Victoria departed for her delayed board meeting, conversations resumed throughout the recreation room, a buzz of speculation and amazement filling the air. Marcus remained at the chess table, resetting the pieces methodically, aware of the occasional glances still directed his way. A junior analyst from the marketing department hesitantly approached, clutching her lunch container like a shield. "Mr. Reed, is it true you beat the CEO in your first chess match, and that's how you got promoted to director?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Corporate legends tend to simplify complex narratives, but you did beat her," the young woman pressed. "We've played several matches," Marcus replied diplomatically. "Ms. Blackwood is a formidable opponent. And today, did she win because you let her? Because of the board meeting interruption?" The question revealed volumes about how Meridian's employees viewed power dynamics. The assumption that a former maintenance worker would deliberately lose to please the CEO, that authenticity was impossible across hierarchical lines. "Ms. Blackwood would never accept an artificial victory," Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying to the small audience that had gathered. "Neither would I offer one. Respect doesn't work that way." The answer seemed to satisfy the analyst, who nodded thoughtfully before returning to her table. As the lunch hour ended and employees drifted back to their departments, Marcus reflected on the public chess match and its ripple effects throughout Meridian's carefully stratified culture. Victoria had known exactly what she was doing by accepting his invitation to play in the recreation room. The symbolism wasn't subtle. The CEO engaging with the director who had once been part of the maintenance staff, prioritizing their meeting over a board summons, demonstrating a relationship based on intellectual respect rather than hierarchical deference. It was a statement piece, moved with the same precision she applied to her chess strategy. The question was, what game was she really playing? Was Marcus a partner in her strategy, or just another piece on her board? As he returned to his office for an afternoon of meetings, Marcus found an email from Victoria in his inbox. It contained only a chess position, the final configuration from their game, and a single line. Analysis of our game suggests there was a defensive combination that could have prevented checkmate. Find it before next week. Marcus smiled at the challenge. Victoria Blackwood might be playing multiple games simultaneously, but at least on the chessboard, she treated him as a worthy opponent, someone to be challenged rather than managed. In the complex ecosystem of Meridian Technologies, that distinction mattered more than any job title or corner office. The mentorship program launched with minimal fanfare but maximum scrutiny. 10 employees from Meridian's operational departments were paired with executives for a 6-month development program that included project work, skills training, and career counseling. The initiative's unusual structure, bridging the vast gulf between the company's lowest and highest ranks, generated both enthusiasm and skepticism throughout the organization. Marcus had designed the program meticulously, drawing from his unique perspective on both sides of the corporate divide. Each mentee received individualized development plans, specific skill-building objectives, and meaningful project assignments aligned with Meridian's strategic goals. The most discussed pairing was Victoria Blackwood with Miguel Vega, a maintenance technician with an associate's degree in electrical engineering and a talent for innovative problem-solving. The CEO mentoring a man who fixed broken light fixtures created ripples of conversation across every floor of Meridian Tower. 3 months into the program, results were beginning to materialize. Diane from the night crew had developed a more efficient cleaning protocol that reduced overtime costs by 18%. Carlos had designed a preventative maintenance system that identified potential failures before they occurred. Miguel, under Victoria's guidance, was creating an energy management dashboard that integrated building systems with operational forecasts. The program's success had begun to attract attention beyond Meridian's walls. Business journals requested interviews. Industry publications highlighted the initiative as innovative, and competing firms sent representatives to networking events that were thinly disguised intelligence-gathering operations. On a crisp autumn morning, Marcus received a calendar invitation that caused him to stare at his screen in confusion. James Porter, chairman of the board, requested a private meeting in his office without Victoria's presence. In the 4 months since Marcus had assumed his director role, he had interacted with Porter only during formal presentations and the awkward confrontation in the recreation room. A one-on-one meeting with the chairman was unprecedented. Marcus arrived at Porter's office precisely on time, his curiosity tempered with caution. The chairman's suite occupied the southeast corner of the executive floor, slightly smaller than Victoria's office, but decorated with more obvious displays of status. Prestigious awards, photographs with political figures, antique furnishings that subtly communicated old money and established power. Porter greeted him with practiced cordiality, gesturing to a leather chair positioned across from his massive oak desk. "Mr. Reed, thank you for making time in your schedule. I've been meaning to have this conversation for some weeks now." Marcus took the offered seat, noting that Porter remained standing, maintaining the height advantage in their interaction. "How can I help you, Mr. Porter?" Porter moved to the window, gazing out at the harbor before turning back with calculated casualness. "You've made quite an impression at Meridian. The maintenance department reorganization, the sustainability initiative, the mentorship program, all remarkably successful in a short time frame." "Thank you," Marcus replied, waiting for the unstated purpose behind this meeting. "Victoria has always had an eye for unconventional talent," Porter continued, finally taking his seat. "Though I must admit, your rapid rise from maintenance to director level raised eyebrows in the boardroom." Marcus nodded, acknowledging the implicit question. "I understand the concerns, It's an unusual trajectory. Indeed, Porter studied him with the assessing gaze of a man accustomed to evaluating assets, yet the results speak for themselves. Your operational improvements have reduced facilities costs by 12% while improving reliability metrics. Quite impressive. The compliments felt like chess moves, positioning pieces before revealing the actual strategy. Marcus remained silent, waiting. Porter's expression shifted subtly, becoming more direct. I'll be frank, Mr. Reed. Victoria Blackwood is a brilliant CEO in many respects. Her financial acumen is unmatched, her strategic vision exceptional, but she has blind spots, sir. People, Mr. Reed. Victoria understands numbers, markets, competitive positioning, but she has historically viewed employees as interchangeable components in the corporate machine. Porter leaned forward slightly. Until recently, Marcus felt a prickle of wariness at the back of his neck. Victoria approved and championed the mentorship program. She's personally mentoring Miguel from maintenance. Precisely my point. Porter's smile didn't reach his eyes. This represents a significant shift in her management philosophy, one that coincides directly with your arrival in the executive suite. The implication hung in the air between them. Marcus considered his response carefully, aware of the delicate territory they were entering. And I believe the mentorship program aligns with Meridian's long-term interests, he said evenly. Developing internal talent reduces recruitment costs and improves operational continuity. Indeed, Porter agreed smoothly. The board is quite pleased with the program's outcomes. So pleased, in fact, that we're considering expanding it significantly in the next fiscal year, with a substantial budget increase and executive sponsorship. That's excellent news, Marcus replied, still trying to identify the chairman's actual agenda. Porter opened a folder on his desk, removing a single sheet of paper. We're prepared to create a new position, Vice President of Talent Development and Operational Excellence, reporting directly to the board rather than to the CEO, with compensation commensurate with the expanded responsibilities. He slid the paper across the desk. Marcus glanced down at the figure circled at the bottom, nearly double his current salary, plus stock options and performance bonuses. Why? Marcus asked, looking up from the offer. Porter seemed taken aback by the directness of the question. I beg your pardon. Why create this position? Why have it report to the board instead of Victoria? Why me? Porter's carefully constructed affability slipped, revealing a more calculating expression. Victoria Blackwood has been Meridian's CEO for 3 years. During that time, she has consistently prioritized financial metrics over human capital. The board believes this mentorship initiative represents a necessary evolution in our corporate philosophy, one that should be expanded regardless of the CEO's traditional preferences. Understanding dawned. You want to take the program away from Victoria and place it under board control. We want to ensure its continued success, Porter corrected smoothly. Victoria's interests and priorities shift with market conditions. This initiative deserves stable, dedicated leadership. Marcus studied the offer sheet again, seeing it now for what it truly was. Not just a promotion, but a strategic realignment. Porter was attempting to separate him from Victoria, to claim the mentorship program's success for the board rather than the CEO. You've been playing chess with Victoria every week for months, Porter continued, his tone carefully neutral. You've developed a certain rapport. But business isn't chess, Mr. Reed. Victoria plays to win, regardless of the pieces sacrificed. And the board doesn't. Porter's smile tightened. And the board has a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions, like undermining your CEO. The bluntness of the question hung in the air between them. Porter's expression hardened, the pretense of casual conversation evaporating. Victoria Blackwood has delivered exceptional financial results, he acknowledged, but her methods have created significant talent retention issues and cultural liabilities. Your mentorship program offers a solution to these problems, one that should be expanded with or without the CEO's full enthusiasm. Marcus stood, a decision crystallizing. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Porter, but I'll need to consider it carefully." Of course, Porter agreed, though his expression suggested he had expected immediate acceptance. "Take the weekend. We can finalize details on Monday." As Marcus left the chairman's office, his mind raced with implications. Porter's offer wasn't merely a promotion. It was a calculated move in a power struggle between the board and the CEO, and Marcus had just been positioned as a key piece in that game. He returned to his office, the offer sheet tucked into his jacket pocket. His weekly chess match with Victoria wasn't scheduled until tomorrow. But this development couldn't wait. He sent a brief message requesting a few minutes of her time that afternoon. Victoria's response came almost immediately. "My office, 4:30. The hours until their meeting stretched interminably. Marcus reviewed quarterly projections, approved equipment requisitions, and fielded questions about the mentorship program's next phase, all while the chairman's offer weighed on his mind like a stone. At precisely 4:30, he entered Victoria's office. She was standing by the window, gazing out at the harbor as Porter had done earlier, though her posture conveyed focused contemplation rather than practiced casualness. "Porter offered you the VP position," she said without turning. Not a question, but a statement of fact. Marcus shouldn't have been surprised by her awareness. Victoria Blackwood's information network within Meridian was legendary. Yes, reporting to the board. Not to me. Now she turned, her expression unreadable. With a substantial compensation increase and expanded authority over the mentorship program. "You knew this was coming," Marcus realized. "I anticipated something similar." Victoria gestured for him to take a seat in one of the chairs positioned before her desk. "Porter has been maneuvering for greater operational control for months. Your mentorship program's success provided him with an opportunity." "It's not my program," Marcus corrected. "It's Meridian's initiative that you approve." A ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips. "Semantics won't matter to the board. They see the program's success, they see your connection to it, and they see a way to claim both while diminishing my authority." She took her seat behind the desk, her posture perfect as always, betraying no emotion beyond calculated assessment. "But what are you going to do, Marcus?" Marcus considered Victoria's question carefully, aware of its layered implications. The chess player in him analyzed positions, calculated potential moves and countermoves, evaluated sacrifices and advantages. The maintenance engineer assessed systems and their interconnections, identifying critical failure points and structural vulnerabilities. "I haven't decided," he answered truthfully. "The position offers significant opportunities to expand the mentorship program. The additional resources could help more employees advance their careers." Victoria nodded, her expression revealing nothing. "A logical assessment. The board's backing would certainly provide financial advantages, but it would remove the program from your direct influence," Marcus added. "And position me as aligned with the board rather than with you." "Yes." Victoria's acknowledgement was simple, matter of fact, though I suspect that's precisely why Porter made the offer. Marcus withdrew the paper from his jacket pocket, placing it on the desk between them. He said, "You have blind spots, that you prioritize financial metrics over human capital." An interesting critique from a man who pushed for pension cuts to fund executive bonuses last year, Victoria observed, a rare flash of emotion, something like disdain, crossing her features. "Is he wrong?" Marcus asked quietly. Victoria's eyes met his, sharp and penetrating. For a moment, the careful corporate mask slipped, revealing something more complex beneath, intelligence tempered with unexpected vulnerability. 3 years ago, when I became CEO, Meridian was hemorrhaging market share to competitors with more innovative products and more efficient operations, she said, her voice measured. "The board gave me 12 months to reverse the decline or face liquidation. 3,000 jobs hung in the balance." She stood, moving to the window again, her silhouette framed against the afternoon light. "I made difficult decisions, cut underperforming divisions, restructured compensation models, prioritized results over comfort. It wasn't popular, but it was necessary and successful." Marcus acknowledged. Meridian's stock value has doubled under your leadership. Yes, Victoria turned back to face him. But Porter isn't entirely wrong. I viewed employees as resources to be optimized, assets with varying returns on investment. The maintenance department's pension plan represented a significant liability with minimal impact on operational performance. Her gaze was steady, unapologetic. By traditional metrics, cutting it was the correct decision. And now, Marcus pressed, and now I recognize the limitations of that approach. Victoria returned to her desk, her posture as precise as ever. Your chess victory forced me to look beyond the obvious moves, to see potential I had overlooked. The mentorship program is producing outcomes that don't appear on quarterly financial statements, but will significantly impact Meridian's long-term sustainability. The admission was remarkable, coming from Victoria Blackwood, known throughout the business world for her unwavering confidence and ironclad conviction. Porter believes he's offering me a chance to advance my initiative, Marcus said. In reality, he's using me to undermine your authority. That's an accurate assessment. Victoria's tone remained neutral. The question is whether his offer serves your objectives regardless of his motivation. Marcus considered this, appreciating her dispassionate framing of the situation. She wasn't appealing to loyalty or emotion. She was acknowledging the strategic dimensions of his choice. What would you do in my position? He asked. Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. Are you asking for my advice, or attempting to discern my strategy? Both, perhaps. A faint smile touched her lips. In chess, when faced with an opponent's unexpected offer, I consider not just the immediate advantage, but the resulting position. Does accepting the sacrifice strengthen my overall strategy or distract from it? She gestured toward the paper on her desk. Porter's offer provides immediate benefits: higher compensation, expanded authority, board-level influence, but it also realigns your position on the board. You become their piece rather than your own or yours. Marcus added, I have never viewed you as my piece, Mark. Victoria's gaze was direct, unwavering. A worthy opponent, certainly. A valuable ally, perhaps, but not a piece to be moved and sacrificed. The statement hung between them, charged with significance beyond their professional relationship. In the months since their first chess match, something had evolved between them, a complex connection built on mutual respect and shared strategic thinking. What happens to the mentorship program if I decline Porter's offer? Marcus asked. It continues under your current directorship with my full support, Victoria replied, though possibly with fewer resources than the board might allocate. And if I accept, the program expands under board control. I adjust my strategic approach accordingly. Her tone remained professional, but Marcus detected a subtle tension in her posture. In either scenario, Meridian benefits from your innovation. The question is whether you believe your vision can be better realized, reporting to the board or to me. Marcus stood, moving to the chessboard that remained permanently set up in the corner of Victoria's office. He studied the pieces, seeing in their arrangement the echoes of their weekly matches, the evolution of strategies, the learning of each other's patterns, the growing sophistication of their play. When I came to your office 4 months ago to discuss pension cuts, I never imagined we'd be having this conversation, he said, picking up the white king, feeling its weight in his palm. A maintenance engineer negotiating between the CEO and the board. Life, like chess, often produces unexpected positions. Victoria joined him at the board. The key is recognizing when the game has fundamentally changed. Marcus replaced the king on its square. I'll give Porter my answer on Monday. Victoria nodded once, accepting his timeline without pressing for his decision. Our match tomorrow is still on, of course, though perhaps with higher stakes than usual. The following day, they met in the recreation room as planned. Word of Porter's offer had spread through Meridian's gossip network with predictable embellishments. Marcus was being poached by the board. Victoria was fighting to keep him. Power struggles were erupting in the executive suite. The room was unusually crowded for a Friday lunch hour, employees finding transparent excuses to witness this latest development in the unfolding corporate drama. They played with focused intensity, their moves deliberate and carefully considered. Victoria attacked with uncharacteristic aggression, sacrificing a bishop for positional advantage. Marcus defended methodically, gradually consolidating his position until he spotted an unexpected combination. "Check," he said, moving his knight to threaten her king. Victoria studied the board, her expression revealing nothing. She moved her king to safety, but the defensive maneuver opened a new vulnerability. 3 moves later, Marcus had her in checkmate. "Well played," Victoria acknowledged, tipping her king in resignation. The gesture was graceful, dignified, a recognition of defeat without surrender of pride. As they reset the pieces, Marcus spoke quietly. His words meant only for her. "I'm declining Porter's offer." Victoria's hands stilled momentarily, then continued arranging the black pieces with practiced precision. "May I ask why? The mentorship program isn't about titles or reporting structures," Marcus replied. "It's about creating pathways between different levels of the organization, connecting the executive perspective with operational realities. Moving it under board control would defeat its purpose. The board would provide significant resources," Victoria noted, though her tone suggested she understood his reasoning. "Resources without the right vision become wasted expenditures," Marcus said, echoing a principle Victoria herself had articulated in an executive meeting. "The program works because it bridges divides between maintenance and management, between operational staff and executive leadership." He placed the final piece on the board, completing the reset. "Besides, I still have much to learn from our matches." The ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips. "As do I." On Monday morning, Marcus met with Porter in the chairman's office. The silver-haired executive's confidence had clearly anticipated an acceptance. The contract was prepared, the announcement draft already written. "I appreciate the opportunity," Marcus said, declining the offered seat, "but I must respectfully decline." Porter's practiced smile faltered. "I'm surprised, Mr. Reed. The compensation package is exceptionally generous." "It is," Marcus acknowledged, "and I'm honored by the board's confidence. However, the mentorship program's success depends on its current integration with operational departments. Moving it under board oversight would disrupt that alignment." "Victoria got to you," Porter concluded, his tone hardening. "She's protecting her authority at the expense of the program's potential. Actually, she never asked me to decline," Marcus replied truthfully. "She recognized that either choice could benefit Meridian in different ways." Porter studied him with new calculation. "You're turning down a vice presidency to remain a director. That's an unusual career decision." "I'm where I need to be," Marcus said simply, "building bridges between departments that have traditionally been separated by hierarchy." As he left Porter's office, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The decision had clarified something essential about his role at Meridian. He wasn't climbing a conventional corporate ladder, but rather constructing lateral connections across the organization's vertical structures. Victoria was waiting in his office when he returned, standing by the window in a posture that mirrored her habitual stance in her own office. "Porter called," she said, without preamble. "He was unusually expressive about your decision." "I imagine he was," Marcus replied, setting his tablet on the desk. Victoria turned to face him. "You surprised him. He's not accustomed to that." "Neither were you once," Marcus observed. "The day we played our first match." A genuine smile appeared on Victoria's face, small but authentic. "A humbling experience, but educational." "For us both," Marcus agreed. Victoria moved to the door, then paused. "The executive committee meets at 3 to review the mentorship program's expansion. I've added an agenda item regarding increased funding from my discretionary budget. Your presence would be valuable." "I'll be there," Marcus promised. As Victoria left, Marcus glanced at the travel chess set she had given him months earlier, still prominently displayed on his desk. The pieces were arranged in the middle of a game. Not their most recent match, but the position from their very first encounter. The position where he had surprised her with an unexpected move that changed the trajectory of both their professional lives. He moved a white pawn forward one space, advancing the game that had been paused in that moment of recognition. There were many moves yet to play in their ongoing match, strategies to develop, positions to strengthen, challenges to overcome. But the board had expanded beyond 64 squares to encompass all of Meridian technologies, and both players now shared a vision that transcended winning or losing. The maintenance engineer and the CEO had found common ground on the most unlikely of battlefields, a simple chessboard that had become a bridge between worlds.